Hi and welcome back. We're talking today. It's me only on this one. Al's listening in. I'm sure he's got his own thoughts on this, but I'm doing Sean's top 5 dynasty picks for this season. So we're talking about dynasty leagues, and we're talking about the rookies that might be the kind of players you want to put on your team going forward for this season and the next few seasons, because that's what you're building. You're building the eliteness of your team, because that's the beauty of Dynasty. It's the long-term value. So I'm going to start off with my favourite player for this year in Dynasty leagues, which is there's a number that are very close, but Fournette's my favourite one for Dynasty leagues because the impact is going to be so high day one. And going forward, he's going to become the rock that the team is going to be built around. And I'm very confident that Fournette will give you, in your dynasty leagues, anywhere between probably somewhere in the range of about 1150 to 1300 yards and somewhere around about 10 touchdowns. That makes him incredibly safe actually going in year one. It's simply based on the volume of work, the talent the player has, and everything else about him. So he's the safest dynasty pick there is. Quite close behind him in dynasty is Corey Davis. Everybody has fallen in love with Corey Davis in dynasty leagues. I know that. There's reason for that. If you haven't seen anything on Corey Davis, then go out and check out some of the YouTube videos that are out there about his career highlights, because they're exceptional. However, you have to temper this and remember that in year one, we've already talked to me and Al in a previous podcast about how loaded the Tennessee Titans are, and Corey Davis, without a shadow of a doubt, is going into a team that's fully loaded with a lot of players. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that team. I think Davis will turn in a very good year one performance, but I'm being realistic when I say probably the ceiling year one is around about 800 to 900 yards, and probably somewhere between 6 and 8 touchdowns for him year one is quite realistic. That's still a great performance, but in a lot of leagues at the moment his ADP is so high that doesn't really correlate very well. But for Dynasty it's fantastic value, and he's a player you absolutely want to have if you can get him. The player I like, which is going to sound odd because we've talked a little bit about the negativity of the team, is at number 3 is McCaffrey. Now the reason I like him is not for year one. I actually, as this is a dynasty video, this is all about the future. I think McCaffrey grows into a fantastic player there in Carolina, and I think the way that they'll find ways to use him will grow as time goes by. I think year one they'll see the issues with what they've got as an offense and how they've got to change, but that change will take them the best part of a season plus. So that's why I'm being a little bit more optimistic with him longer term than I am year one. I have concerns that he's not going to get the production you need on his ADP. But in dynasty leagues, that's a different matter entirely. The talent's there, the potential's there, and the amount of volume that he could have could be fantastic. So, when you talk about ceilings, the sky could be the limit. Perhaps he does what people are predicting. Maybe he does get 80 plus catches from year one. And then what do we do when we go into year two? We realise how good he is. So he's very high on that list. Number 4 on my list is Joe Mixon. Now, actually, when we look at redraft leagues, Mixon really is one of my favourite players this year to talk about. I like him a lot. I like him in Dynasty as well. I think the impact is huge. I mean, I could easily move him up this list and put him above Davis, if I'm being honest. It's splitting hairs when you look at these players. But as we're in Dynasty, I'm kind of looking at it in the long term. Mixon, I think, year one comes in, takes the job very, very quickly. A lot of people don't believe that's going to happen, and I understand their concerns, but for me, there is no concerns. The team went in high. They went in high for a reason. Mixon is a 3-down back. Mixon can do a lot of things. There will not be the kind of competition from Bernard, because he won't be there. Giovanni Bernard, he's going to still be dealing with his ACL. Jeremy Hill, his production has slowed off the page. Yes, as Al points out rightly, he's had his 10 touchdowns every single year. This is the role that Mixon's about to take over. Mixon could easily end up with 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. He could end up with 300 to 400 yards receiving and another 3 or 4 touchdowns. This is a stud. This is a great player. But the ADP reflects that in redraft. But in dynasty leagues, this is a fantastic player if he drops to you. I have no doubts about Mixon. What I'd like to do with Mixon in dynasty is fairly simple. He's a bit like the Bryant we talked about in the previous video. I capitalise year one. I have him on some teams. I will literally ride him off into the sunset year one, hoping for this performance. And should I get it, I will sell very high next year, looking to add a veteran to my team and a very high draft pick, which I'll get because people will believe in his value then. Number 5 is Dalvin Cook. This has split a lot of opinions, Dalvin Cook, but I'm very comfortable on him actually, both in redraft and dynasty. And as much as I don't want to give too much away, the truth is that I think Al highlighted a very important stat in Minnesota in our previous video, which showed how they spread the ball around. And I think Cook benefits from this greatly with Sam Bradford being at the helm for this season. And I think he will grow into a very good role there in Dynasty. he was disappointing in the combine, and this has put a lot of people off. And a lot of people have talked about how that impacts players when they go into the pros. I think you need to look back at the tape of Dalvin Cook very carefully and look at some of the games he was in against and what kind of opponents he had. Yes, he had a bad pro day, but one day does not make a career, and I think that this guy seriously has a chip on his shoulder and a lot to prove, and I think you will see that on the field. So be prepared for Cook to do exceptionally well year one. It's difficult to put numbers on him because he will split a load here in Minnesota. There will be some issues, but I think dynasty-wise, I think his value grows, and I think by year two he becomes an all-out back for Minnesota, and maybe that's the return of Teddy Bridgewater, and that could be an exciting team to watch then with Cook there. I want to mention an honourable mention at pick 6. Technically it's my top 5. I just want to give an honourable mention to Sanjay Perrin. I apologise to Sanjay Perrin if I've got your name wrong. Hopefully I've got it right. I always struggle with one fantasy name, and this is the one. But the opportunity for him from day one is there, and I do believe he will take over the job. It's difficult to predict it, but I suspect by halfway through the season, Sanjay Perrin is the workhorse back there in that exciting offence. There's a lot of good pieces there, and I think he will take over the job for the foreseeable future. So as a dynasty player, he's a fantastic pick and well worth a mention. So those are technically my top 5/6. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you agree or disagree with anything, by all means, please tell us. We need you to we need your opinions. They're as important as ours. So thanks for listening.